Canadian food. If you grow it, produce it, process it, pack it, or move it, you're not just a foundation of our nation, you're a key to our future. And we're behind you every step of the way. We're Farm Credit Canada, the only lender 100% invested in Canadian food. That means we're invested in you with financing and knowledge to help you achieve your dreams. If you're behind Canadian food, we're behind you. Learn more at fcc.ca. FCC. Dream. Grow. Thrive.
Welcome to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show. The doctor is in the house. Do 2 affirmations and call me in the morning. Change your life one new thought at a time. Make your dreams come true. Attract that lasting, loving relationship. Successful career. Radiant health and abundant wealth. Tune in to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show and learn positive ways to get what you want on www.contacttalkradio.com.
And welcome to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show, where dreams really can and do come true. And welcome to the home of affirmations, positive thinking, and much, much more. And due to the many requests I've had, asking me more questions about my special guest today, I'm asked him to come back and talk about something new he's doing. So I want to say a warm welcome to Garnet Schulhauser, and I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Well, hi, Dr. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me on your show again. It's always a delight to have a discussion with you.
Yes, and we always have I always learn such interesting things when I speak with you. And now tell us about, you're excited because you have a new book coming out, don't you?
Yeah, my 5th book, which is called Dancing with Angels in Heaven, is in the process of being published, Dr. Anne. And I don't have an exact release date yet, but it'll be sometime, hopefully in the first half of 2021.
That's great. It's coming up then. Yes. So now, can you tell us a little bit about people that are tuning in for the first time, perhaps, or haven't heard you before? Maybe let's hear a little bit about you, the man behind all these books. Let's, how you came to write books in the first place.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised as a Roman Catholic back in Saskatchewan. Raised on a small farm, and it was a very religious family, and I did all the normal things for a Catholic boy. I was an altar boy and did all that sort of stuff, and we went to church not just every week, but first Fridays and first Saturdays, and we said the family rosary, and so it was a very religious family. But when I got into my 20s and 30s at university, I started to question a lot of the beliefs of the Catholic Church, a lot of the things, the rules and regulations they drummed into my head as a child. And a lot of them didn't seem to make much sense to me. And so as I examined them sort of under the microscope, I ended up sort of disavowing a lot of them and deciding that, no, this didn't really make a lot of sense. So then for the longest time, I was sort of in no man's land, where I had rejected a lot of what the Catholic Church taught me, but I hadn't found anything new to latch onto. And in the course of, I went to university and I ended up in law school, and I graduated from law school, and I went to practice law in Calgary. And so for the biggest part of my life, I was a lawyer, a corporate lawyer in Calgary. I was really didn't have any religion to speak of. I wasn't really spiritual. So I was kind of I was like typical, like a lot of people. I would look at myself in the mirror on a Monday morning as I was shaving and think, now, okay, who am I? Why am I here? Who put me here? What's my purpose? Like, how did I end up here? Excuse me. And so that was sort of those burning questions that I had. And so nothing really came of it until one day in 2007. I was still practicing law in Calgary, and I was very much of a stuffed shirt, buttoned down corporate lawyer. And what really changed my life, all of a sudden I was walking down the street one sunny afternoon in May, and this homeless man jumped out in front of me and just stopped me in my tracks. And he looked like very, very much like a typical homeless man with a long stringy hair and scraggly beard and dirty slept-in clothes. But I didn't go around him as I usually would with these people because he had these amazing, dazzling, sparkling blue eyes. And he sort of held me there like I was like a deer caught in the headlights. And his gaze was sending me this wave of pure, unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. I'd never felt this before. It was just so amazing that I could have just stood there forever. And it was like a time warp. I didn't know how long I stood there. Finally, this homeless man broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And then he quickly disappeared into a nearby store. And so when I finally collected my wits, I decided I needed to find this man. I needed to find out who he was. Why did he stop me? And how did he have these amazing eyes? So I went into the store to look for him. And there was only one entrance and one exit. And he hadn't come out, but he wasn't in the store anywhere. So I went back out on the street, walked up and down for several blocks trying to find him. But he had disappeared into thin air. He was just totally gone. So the next day, I resolved I had to go back to try to find him. So I went back to the same street, the same time of day, and I walked up and down the street for about 15 or 20 minutes, hoping to find him. I was about to give up when I spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. And so I walked up to him and I said, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to help you on your journey and answer your questions." Unfortunately, my lawyer brain kicked in then, and once you're a lawyer, you can never get rid of your lawyer brain. My lawyer brain with a lot of skepticism, and I said to him, "Why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because it looks like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish."
Oh dear.
He just gave me a big smile and he said, "Looks can be deceiving because you look like you're a successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade." He said, "You know what? If you want to, turn around and go back to your office and see if you can find the answers to all of those questions you've been asking all these years. See if you can find those answers in all those emails from your clients waiting for you on your computer." Well, of course, I knew that wasn't going to happen. And fortunately, my intuition said, what do I have to lose to sit down and talk with this guy for half an hour? So I sat down on the bench beside him and we began a conversation. And I found out early on that his name was Albert, and he was really one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he said he had come into my life to answer my questions, all the ones I've been asking myself over the years. But he also said that he wanted me to write a book about his revelations so that they would be available for everyone. So there was my game plan. I'd never thought of writing a book, so it kind of surprised me. But anyway, he was within the first few minutes, I realized that he was the real thing. He was really who he said he was. He had a very honest face, a way of talking that just made me feel very comfortable. So I had no doubts whatsoever. So that began a conversation. And we conversed for a while that first day on the bench. Then he came into my life as a homeless man a couple other times. We continued the conversation. And then after the third time, he no longer appeared in physical form, but he communicated with me by telepathy. He was just a voice in my head. And when I asked him, "Why did you show up as the homeless man?" And he said, "Well, because if I had just out of the blue started talking to you as a voice in your head, you probably would have thought you were losing your mind. So I had to come and show you who I was in physical form." And he was physical. Not only could I see him, I could touch him. And so that's why he came into my life. And he let on to me later that I was the only one who could actually see him in physical form. So had other people been walking by the bench that day when I'm sitting there with Albert, they would have just seen me. They wouldn't have seen him, and they would have seen me apparently talking to myself because they couldn't see the person. So anyway, that was quite the introduction. And so we went through a series of dialogues of several months. I would ask him questions. He would answer. It was a Q&A. I would take extensive notes, and gradually those notes devolved into my very first book called Dancing on a Stamp, which is my first dialogue with Albert. And then later on, he came into my life again in a different form. I was sleeping in my bed, sound asleep, middle of the night, and something made me wake up. I sat up and I looked, and standing at the doorway of my bedroom was this sort of ghost-like ethereal figure. And when it moved closer to my bed, I could see it was my old friend Albert, but now he was in astral form. And so I said to him, "Hi, Albert, what brings you here? What's happening?" He said, "I've come to take you on a series of astral trips. I'm going to take you to the spirit side, other places on our planet to show you things, other places in the universe, because I want you to write what you see and hear in your next books. And by the way, you've written one, you're going to write at least 3 or 4 more, which really sort of threw me for a loop because I hadn't anticipated this at all. But in that event, I had learned to trust him. So I said, okay, let's go. And he then reached out, grabbed my astral hand, pulled my astral body basically out of my physical body. I turned around and looked, and my physical body was still sound asleep in bed. And I said, okay, let's go. So he led me up through the roof of the house, up through the clouds, and up to the high spot above our planet, where he let me look back on our very beautiful planet from a very high perspective from space. And so that led to a series of astral trips, which I describe in my second, third, and fourth book. Second book is Dancing Forever with Spirit. Third book is Dance of Heavenly Bliss, and the fourth book is Dance of Eternal Rapture. And then he has since then come back into my life again. And my fifth book is more stories about Albert and the astral trips that he took me on. So that's sort of how I got here.
Well, I want to tell you that I've heard you tell that story, how you got started, and I'm glad you did, because I know people for the first time, or they're hearing about it, it'll be good for them to know. But I never get tired of hearing it, because it's such a fabulous story and such a fabulous experience of you going from maybe a lawyer that's maybe kind of lawyers. I used to work for them, and they're wonderful. I love them. And going from a lawyer to a famous author, that is quite it's quite an event, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was quite a transformation for me, because I've really changed, as you can imagine. I've changed a lot. I used to be the typical type A personality, the ones that are prone for heart attacks, because I was so much stress and I was so uptight with practicing law. And then since then, things have really changed, because now I realize I understand who I am, where I came from, what I'm supposed to be doing, and where I'm going, which gives me a lot of comfort. And it also just changes my whole outlook on life. I look at people differently, Dr. Ann, because I now understand that every human that I see, whether it's my neighbor or coworker or somebody walking down the street, I realize they're humans, or they're really souls having a human journey. And that we're all here having a human journey that we chose to have, to learn and experience things, to grow and evolve as souls. And so when you have that understanding, you look at people much differently, and you don't see the color of their skin or the language they speak or the religion they adhere to. You understand that they're all just having their own journey. They all have their own difficulties, their own obstacles, the lessons that they have to learn, and everyone is different. And so you have to sort of have a charitable outlook on other people. And if they make a mistake, or if they harm you in some way, you have to say, okay, well, that's just their journey, and nothing is permanent. Nothing that happens on earth is permanent except the memories we make and the wisdom we gain from our journey. So
that's interesting. The memories we make and the what we learn from our journeys, that's what is constant. Is that what you said?
Exactly. Like it doesn't matter. You don't take any material goods with you. You don't take any negative emotions with you, so that if you hated somebody when you're on earth, when you get back to the spirit side after your body dies, all that disappears, and all you retain are your memories, the lessons that you've faced and learned, and the wisdom that you gained, and that's all part of your evolution. And so with that in mind, it's easier. You don't have to take things so seriously. You don't have to think that everything that happens here is really life and death. Things do affect us, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively. But at the end of the day, we all go back to the same place. No matter whether you're a billionaire or whether you're a homeless man on the street, everyone goes back to the same place, and you don't take anything with you. You don't take your money. You don't take your material goods. All that just stays behind. And so, as some people have said, death is the great equalizer. It is, because we all came into these incarnations in the same way, as equals, as souls who are equal in every respect. And then things change as you get on in a human incarnation. You get on planet Earth, and things are quite a bit different, as you know, Dr. Ann. But then when you go back and your body's died and you go back to the spirit side, everyone's then again back on equal footing. And we look back at these things when we finish our lives as that we went through a journey, a lesson that we were supposed to learn things, and it doesn't matter whether you learned what you want to learn or you learned nothing. Everyone still ends up at the same place, back in the spirit side.
That's true. And, I'm just sitting here wondering, Garnet, it would be if this person had appeared to you as a fellow lawyer, would you, how would that would have affected you? And was it that he came as a homeless man to show that there really is no difference? Or what do you think about that?
Well, I did ask Albert about that, and I said to him, "Why did you show up as a homeless man?" He said it was a bit of a test for me because he knew that I was a very arrogant, condescending lawyer, and that in the past he knew that if I met homeless people on the street, I would say to myself, "Get on my way, you bum. Why don't you get a job like the rest of us?" That was my attitude.
Yeah.
And this is the test. He said he wanted to see whether or not I could actually, in his words, sort of bring myself down to the level of a homeless man and have a conversation with him.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I passed that test. So, and I don't know, I asked him, I said, what would have happened if I had just walked around you that day? Would you have come back to me in another form? And he said, "That's academic. I'm not going to answer that." So he won't tell me. But fortunately, I did manage to see that there was something different about this guy, and I decided, well, let's see what he has to say. And it only took, like I said, literally a couple of minutes, and I was fully hooked. I knew who he was. I knew that he spoke the truth, and that I was very comfortable talking to him.
Well, I feel like I know him too after talking to you. You've been on my show quite a few times, and I do think that you get to feel like you know the person, because I feel like I know this Albert. It's interesting.
Yeah, I hope that people get the same thing from listening to your show or reading my books. He's a very much of a down to earth kind of a soul. He didn't preach to me or lecture me or tell me about all the bad things I've been doing, wrong things, and I have been doing a lot of those, still am, in fact. But he was like an old friend that I hadn't seen for a few years, and we hooked up and sat down and had a chat over a beer. It was just that kind of a conversation. And he has a great sense of humor. He, excuse me, he loved to poke fun at me because he knew that I had many human foibles and I did a lot of goofy things. But it was all in good fun, and I took it that way. And so he really said, he was just like a really close friend. And I actually did find out that he and I had a number of previous incarnations on Earth before in various different roles, and he described a few of them to me. So we've had some experience together, and I was quite happy that I found out that when I was doing my life plan, that I asked him to be one of my guides. And he was quite happy to sign on. But he also had an ulterior motive. He wasn't just sort of there to help me on my journey. He wanted me to write books about what he told me, because he wanted his message to get out. And he has a number of messengers all over the world. I'm just one of them. And so I was quite happy to write his books and get the message out. And hopefully people will read the books and learn something from them.
Yes.
and get to know Albert.
And I think you're a most wonderful addition to it too, because you take everything seriously. You're a lawyer. You look at it from all aspects, and I think you are the perfect person for him to contact. That's my opinion.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I think that excuse me, is that he obviously decided the same thing, but he actually said that he and I had planned this meeting before I incarnated. So it was part of my life plan. He said that this is what's going to happen. I'm going to show up, at this point in time. Of course, I don't remember that, because you don't remember your life plan after you're born. So I had no idea that we had discussed this, but he had pre-planned all this, and he waited for the right moment and came into my life. And luckily I listened to him, and I had conversations with him, and I followed him on the Astral Trips, which is what he wanted. And I actually did write the books. And I should tell you, after I wrote the manuscript for my first book, I was really hesitant, Dr. Ann, about publishing it, because it was totally out of character for me in terms of my former law partners, former clients, other people. I thought a lot of them would think I'd lost my mind.
Yeah, I can imagine.
and so I was a bit reluctant, but after a while I thought, if I don't publish this book, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. So I'm going to do it. Let the chips fall where they may. If I lose a few people along the way, so be it. But in point of fact, I have gained many, many new friends and acquaintances, as a result of writing my book. So overall, it's been a very positive experience.
And believe me, I know about writing books. It's not the easiest to do. I'm doing a book on angels right now, and it's a lot of work writing a book, and we know that. And I've got quite a few of them out there. And now let's take us on a journey. And what I want to do is I want to be conscious of the time here, because I do want to talk a lot about your new book. But just take us on a journey of the first book, just the highlights of the other books leading up to this one.
Okay. No, I mean, you want me to start at the very first book? Or the first
Yeah,
book?
what did the first book, just a sentence or two, what the first book,
The first
yeah.
book basically described the cycle of reincarnation that we experience on Earth. So he basically said, who are you? You're an eternal soul. Your true home is the spirit side, which is a very high vibration dimension, okay? Some people call it heaven or whatever. He says it's the spirit side. He says, so you're a soul there. You came to Earth by your own choice because you wanted to learn and experience things that you can only experience on planet Earth, which is just a school. And so we sort of plan our incarnation by doing a life plan. We pick out our parents, place we're going to be born, first language we learn, and things like that. So then once we get into the incarnation, we forget where we came from. We forget that we had a life plan. And so we have to sort of struggle our way through life, sort of without this sort of detailed roadmap that we prepared for ourselves before we incarnated. So we're here to learn. We came here by our choice. We're here to grow and evolve, to face challenges, learn lessons, to help us in our evolution. And so that's why we're here. When our physical bodies die, we all go back to where we came from, back to our true home, which is the spirit side. Yeah. But one of the things, a couple of the things that he said, which really flew in the face of what Christian holy men have been preaching for centuries, is that he says, God or the source, I refer to it as the source. So the source did not put us here. We chose to come here ourselves. The source does not make rules for us to follow, which is really contrary to what the Catholic Church taught me, where there was all kinds of rules that he said came from God. So he said the source doesn't make rules. Source does not manipulate events. And the big one is the source does not judge us when our physical bodies die. We don't go and appear in front of our maker to get a judgment where if we have led a bad life, we go to hell. He says there is no hell. There's no Satan. Everyone goes back to the same place, the spirit side from whence they came, regardless of what they did on the planet. And so that was quite a different picture from what the Catholic Church had taught me, or what other Christian churches, teach their people. So that was a real big eye opener. That was the main theme of the first book, is that you have to understand exactly how all this works.
That's good. So that's book number one. And folks, you should they should get all copies of every book, shouldn't they? So they can get the whole story. Yeah. Yeah.
And then on the other books, it was a series of astral trips that he took me on to see different things. When you're traveling in astral form, of course, you can pass through walls and ceilings and whatever. Other people can't typically see you. You can travel quite quickly, so that if Albert says, let's go to some planet, 12 light years away, it was just like the snap of a finger and you're there. Wow. So it was quite interesting. And every place he took me, he had his own agenda. Every place he took me was for me to learn something new, to talk to somebody who was a wise soul who had perhaps incarnated many times before. And all of this was so that I could, write it down when I woke up the next morning, and put it into a book. And so they're just the second, third, and fourth books. In fact, the fifth books are basically about my astral trips with Albert. And I had some very interesting things to see, different civilizations, different things that happened on planet Earth. I spoke to many sort of wise and somewhat famous people on the spirit side, and they all had some words of wisdom to pass on, which I wrote about. So it's really a question of people they really should read them all. Start with the second book, go to the third, go to the fourth, and then read the fifth book when it comes out, and you'll sort of get the whole picture about what Albert was trying to tell me about planet Earth, about the cycle of reincarnation, and about other things in the universe.
Although it seems a little scary and far out to people, it must be a wonderful journey to go like that. I would, just listening to you, it would be nice if I could go on a journey like that, but I guess you have to be called or agreed before that happens. You just can't say, oh, I want to meet my spirit guide. Can we? Or can we do that?
Yeah, typically, yeah, it was a special sort of one-off situation that Albert had worked out with the with the wise spirits on the spirit side about who his messenger should be, how she'd approach him. So anyway, this is all worked out. Most people, unfortunately, don't have that opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with their spirit guide. Everyone has spirit guides, as you know, Dr. Ann, but most of the time they don't get to have that direct conversation with them. And even though you want to, for most people, that just doesn't happen. So I guess I consider myself very fortunate, very lucky to have this direct contact with Albert, and it's been a real change in my life. And I really hope that the information that Albert gives me, which I put in my books, can help other people on their journeys. Because
Actually, that's what your whole books are about, to help others on their journey, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that I know that after listening to what Albert told me about the reality of the cycle of reincarnation, it's made my life a lot easier. I no longer have to wonder about what happens when I die. I have no fear about dying. I know where I'm going. And in the meantime, I know that I should try to do my best to be a good person, to try to meet all my challenges and learn my lessons, so I can continue to grow and evolve. And at some point, I want to get to the point where I can, after a life, I can say, okay, I've learned everything that planet Earth has to offer. So I'm graduated from that place, and then I'm going to go on somewhere else. And so I'm not sure where I am. Albert won't tell me at which stage I am, but for obvious reasons. But so I have no idea whether I'm near the end of my lives or I have a bunch to go. Don't know.
Yeah. And now, what would you say to a person like Claire that called me just before the show? And she said to ask you if you have some words of wisdom and for people that are worried about COVID and COVID-19 and worried about dying and catching all that. How would you address that?
Well, excuse me, I've talked to Albert about that. He says that COVID will pass. He said that there's going to be, it could get a bit worse before it gets better. There's going to be people who are going to be sick and who are dying, but it's just one of the sort of the cleansing that Gaia does every so often on planet Earth. And so he says, like, don't worry about it. It's not going to destroy our civilization. Not everyone's going to die. We just have to sort of follow the health scientists in terms of what they tell us to do or not do, and we'll get through it, and we'll come out. He says, in fact, we'll come out of this stronger than before we went into it.
Wow, that's interesting. That really is. Now, I want to spend a bit more time now. I was talking about your new book, what's coming up, and what people can expect, because some people have all your books, and maybe some people don't have any of them. So I just want to know what's new and exciting about the 5th edition.
Okay, well, excuse me. I don't want to get into too many details, but I'll give you a general picture because it's not published yet. So anyway, one of the amazing things was that Albert took me to the spirit side, and he allowed me to sit in on an orientation class. And basically what it was is an orientation for souls who have never before incarnated on Earth, to give them sort of the laydown about how this all works and what to expect and why you're doing this and all the other things that they might encounter. And so I got to listen in on this. And so it was for me a very good refresher, because there's Albert and the chair of the Council of Wise Ones, Sophia, were sort of giving this orientation. And it was sort of so that people who have not read any of my books before, if they read this book, they'll get sort of the lowdown at the first part of it as to how all this stuff works, in terms of why we came here, how, what we're trying to do here, how we prepare life plans, how the universe started, what happens when we die, all the things that sort of that people have wondered, the big questions in life. He talks about, they talk about soul guides, spirit guides, and how they work into your life. They talk about transitioning into what happens when you transition in from the physical body into the spirit side. They talk about the role of the source in the whole scheme of things. They discuss why there's evil on Earth. Evil on Earth is not caused by demons or evil spirits, because there are none. It's evil is caused by, for the most part, humans letting their negative emotions get out of control, like fear, anger, hate, greed, and so on. That causes most of the evil on planet Earth. And there's also a conversation with Gaia, who's the consciousness of Mother Earth, and her message. And I've met with her a few times. Her message is quite clear. She's very upset about the way humans have behaved in the last few hundred years with their pollution. She's very protective of all her plants and animals on planet Earth, and she wants to have a balanced ecosystem. And she's really upset at humans and how we're polluting, her rivers and lakes and oceans and air and soil and everything else. And she really needs that to stop. And in fact, what Albert told me was that one of the reasons that Gaia sort of unleashed the COVID pandemic was she wanted to give humankind sort of a pause, a sort of a put everything on pause with the lockdowns. Everyone was sort of put locked into their homes, and everything sort of more or less came to a halt. She wanted us to have that pause so that we could reflect on what we were doing as a human race, what we were doing wrong, and how we could make it better. And one of the things was that a lot of people noticed that during the first lockdown in the spring, that there was a whole lot less pollution on our planet than before. People were noting that the smog above LA had dissipated considerably. That the canals in Venice, for example, were now so clear that you could see dolphins swimming in them. Somebody reported that for the first time in many, many years, a person could see the pyramids from Cairo, the Egyptian pyramids. And so all this was to do with the fact that there was not as many people driving, not as much fossil fuels being burned, not as much other activity. And sort of like a lot of people noticed that. She wants us to see what can happen if we put our minds to alleviating our pollution, or most of it anyway. And so that was just sort of a wake-up call that she was sending to us. And we'll get through it. And I think that we'll be more keen now about climate change and about trying to stop the things that are happening with our pollution. And we need to really get our act together, because otherwise it could just get worse. And so that is why we're probably going to come out of this better, because we're going to have more people who are more in tune to the problems with climate change and the fact that we really do need to quit abusing Mother Earth with our pollution and quit abusing other animals in our planet. And so Gaia had a really good message, and it's a very consistent message, and one that hopefully everyone will take to heart. And when we get through this pandemic, hopefully things will turn out to be a lot better. Albert's very confident we'll come out much stronger.
Yeah.
So anyway, all this happened during this orientation session, and there was discussion of the new Earth, which is really our Earth in a higher dimension. It's always there. It's been there. It's called New Earth, but it's been there all along. It's at a higher vibration, and there things are much better. Nobody pollutes there. There's no negative emotions. There's no crime. There's no need for money. It's a very happy kind of place, and that is where they really drove the message home. That is where all humans should strive to get to, and you get there by raising your vibrations. And how do you raise your vibrations? By discarding and stifling negative emotions and fully embracing love, compassion, and forgiveness. And once you fully do this, your vibrations will raise, and you can rise up to the new Earth. And so that was really sort of one of the overlying messages from this orientation session, is that get to planet Earth, hopefully do some good things. And if you can conquer your negative emotions and embrace love and compassion, you can end up in the new Earth. And so that they sort of very neatly laid out the sort of the whole cycle as to why you're here, what happens when you're here, what happens afterwards, and the fact that we all have to recognize that every one of us are souls having a human journey. And once you recognize that, then it's much easier to ignore other things, the differences that people have. And he just said it's foolish to treat people differently because you have because they have a different color of skin, speak a different language, worship a different God, have different customs. That's just all nonsense when you realize that they are souls just like you and everyone else, and we're all struggling with our own journey. And once we realize that, then we could go ahead and have a much better life on planet Earth. So that was that was sort of the gist of the orientation session. And basically, it was very, because there's a lot of people who want to incarnate on Earth who've never done so before. Dr. Ann, the people who have been through a number of incarnations, of course, they knew all this, but the people who've never been here before, they have to decide: do I want to jump into this school called Earth, which is a very difficult school, or should I just take a pass? And everyone has the right to decide whether or not they want to do that. And so that was sort of the orientation session, which I got to sit in and listen on. And a lot of the stuff that they told the people who were taking the orientation, I already knew in various times from my conversations with Albert. But it was all nice to have it all set out in a nice sort of nutshell that was sort of right there in front of us.
Yeah.
But I saw some other. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask you. So is that orientation in the fifth book coming up?
Yes, that's the orientation is in the fifth book, and it's I think it very neatly lays out sort of the whole, from start to finish, sort of the whole thing about how the universe started and how souls were created and why we would go to planet Earth and how reincarnation works and sort of all.
So just a minute now, I just want to go back over that. So it's the orientation, and it lays out how the word Earth started. Is that what you said?
Yeah, they talk about how the universe started and the source and how the how souls were created, and then how each of us is a soul, and how we can go ahead and incarnate. The reason we incarnate in a physical plane like planet Earth or other planets is because there are things there that you can't experience in spirit form on the spirit side, and so we come here to sort of learn firsthand. You can learn things on the spirit side about what happens on planet Earth, but you can't really fully understand how things work until you incarnate into a physical body, and then you can experience. Hate and all the other negative emotions and all the things that make Earth such at times a very horrible place. That's where you have to actually incarnate to experience this firsthand. And so that's it's all laid out very neatly. It talks about our spirit guides, guardian angels. It talks about how you decide how you leave the incarnation. The fact that your physical body dies when your soul decides it's time to leave, so no one dies by accident. There's a lot of very interesting things there, and for somebody who hasn't, even if you've read my books, a lot of the stuff that was in the orientation is sort of in various other places in my books, but it's all not in one place. So here it was sort of all in one place, sort of the whole layout of who we are, why we're here, what's happening in the universe, why do we come here, and it's sort of all a very sort of a neat package in this orientation session. And then sorry?
The new book brings it all together, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sort of brings it all together. That's the first part of the new book, and then he takes me to visit a few other very wise souls on the spirit side. For one, I got to meet with Albert Einstein.
Wow.
And so I had a discussion with him. During his lifetime, he was trying to put together what he called the unified field theory, where he's trying to unify all the different physical elements of the universe, and he didn't quite succeed. I asked him, well, did you figure it out once you passed back to the spirit side? He said, oh yes, got all that. It was when I look at it, he said it was so simple. I don't know how I didn't figure it out back on Earth, but now I know. And he talks about things like faster than light space travel. One of the things he said when he was on Earth is that you couldn't exceed the speed of light. That was one of his theories. And he said, yeah, you can, because what happens is that there are some what he called wormholes or sort of gateways throughout the universe, most of them naturally occurring, and these things can take you great distances very quickly. And so he says that the extraterrestrials who have faster than light space travel, they do so by basically creating an artificial wormhole, which allows them to traverse vast distances in a very short period of time. And he said, humans on Earth will get there eventually. They're not there yet, but he said that will come, and it's and that's how the ETs who've been visiting Earth for eons, that's how they get here. And so it was very interesting.
Yes.
I also had a conversation with, and some people may think this is a bit strange, but it was a conversation with Marie Antoinette.
Oh, yeah.
And she, of course, as you know, that she was married to Louis XVI of France, and that she and her husband both lost their heads during the Revolution. Yeah. It was very interesting because she basically said that well, I won't get into all the nitty gritty. I'd like people to read the book, but basically one of the things she said was, I asked her, I said, when you were sentenced to be have your head cut off with a guillotine, were you concerned? Were you frightened? And she says, well, initially, yes. But then she says, what happened was that a few days before the date, her spirit guides appeared to her, a couple of them, appeared in her cell, identified themselves, told her that they were there to help her on a transition, and that, that it would not be any big deal. She wouldn't feel any pain, and they'd be with her the whole way. So she said, as she's walking towards the guillotine, they were there with her. Nobody else could see them, but they were there with her. And then she said that her soul left her body before the guillotine blade dropped. So she didn't feel any discomfort, no pain, no nothing.
Okay.
And so she was then hovering above the stage and watching her head roll off the stage into a gutter. And she said that people dread dying, and they wonder whether their physical death is going to be painful and distressful, whatever. She says, no, that's not the case, because your guides will actually be there to comfort you, to pull you out of your body before anything happens, in this case, before the blades, lopped off her head. And so she said it was a very easy transition, and she just followed her guides off to the spirit side, and away she went. And so it was very, very interesting. I mean, not that, the main thing I got out of that was that be comforted that if you were sentenced to be hung or have your head cut off or shot with a firing squad or whatever, it's not going to be as bad as you may imagine, because you actually leave your body before the bad stuff happens.
Well, that's good to know, Garnet. Well, folks, you're listening to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show, where dreams really can and do come true. And I know you're enjoying this talk we're having with my special guest, Garnet Schulhauser. And we'll be right back after the short break with more with Garnet Schulhauser.
When was the last time you read a book that has created a profound impact on your life? This book is touching deep into the hearts of readers worldwide and empowering people with new hope to conquer over a life of despair, loneliness, and sadness. This book is called Affirmations, Your Passport to Happiness by Dr. Anne Marie Evers. In this book, you'll learn the power of affirmations, creating visualization, goal setting, positive thinking, self-esteem, learn how to attract the perfect, lasting, successful career, relationship, and have optimal health. To order your copy, log on to www.affirmations-doctor.com or email AnneMarieEvers@shore.ca and get your passport to happiness. Affirmations, Your Passport to Happiness, the book that's giving people positive control over their lives once again.
And welcome back to the Dr. Anne Marie Evers Show. And I keep saying where dreams really can and do come true. And today I've got my very special guest, Garnet Schulhauser, and he's been on the show many times, and I know he's back by special request. And now we want to talk more. We have a few minutes left to talk about whatever you want to talk about, Garnet, to give people hope.
Okay, well, just I won't get into details, but some of the other interesting people I met on this that I've described in this book are Mother Teresa. Very interesting conversation with her. I've also met with a different planet, a person who was actually a reptilian kind of person, looked like an alligator to me. Albert took me there to this planet many light years from Earth, and there it was interesting that they did not need to consume food of any kind, any physical food. They got all of their energy because they found a way to tap and convert the energy from their sun into energy they could use. And so it was a very, very idyllic kind of society where they didn't kill other animals, and everyone sort of lived in harmony. Kind of, I won't get into any more details, but it's kind of an interesting
Yes. And
encounter.
did you, I thought one day you met Hitler, did you?
Yeah, I did. That was in, trying to remember now, second or third book. So I didn't meet him on this time, but yeah, I did meet Hitler, and there he was. He was a very. I met the soul who had his last incarnation as Hitler, and this soul was just like a very normal soul. He said that he was very sorry for all the things he did as Hitler, and that he was really resolved to try to go into another life and do better the next time. And so it was interesting. Hitler was sitting side by side on a bench with Jesus Christ. So it was sort of like two polar opposites, but they both, when you're over there, the things that you did on planet Earth, like Hitler, all the awful things that he did on when he was living on planet Earth, people don't look at him that way. They all say, okay, well, you had a bad trip, basically. You had a bad journey. Your negative emotions got out of control. But here we understand, we love you. It's unconditional love, and we encourage you to go ahead and go back to Earth and to try to do better. Anyway, that's not in book 5, but I encourage people to read my other books because there's a bigger discussion about Hitler and Jesus Christ. One of the interesting things, and we're running out of time here, but one of the interesting things is that we had a discussion about parallel universes. And how this happens, Dr. Ann, is that when the first universe was created, the source created it so that it would at random times split into two. Okay, just like a human cell that splits into two called mitosis. So the first universe split into two. Then after some point in time, at random periods, those universes split into two, and so on. So now we have basically a countless number of parallel universes. And in parallel universes, some things are very similar and some things are very different. So for example, planet Earth in some universes doesn't even exist because of a quirk in the formation of the solar system. In other universes, planet Earth, the asteroid that hit the Yucatan Peninsula and wiped out most of the dinosaurs missed by a whisker. And so on that Earth, dinosaurs are still the dominant species. But it also, where it really impacts is that there's a lot of planet Earths in parallel that are fairly similar to us, but different in many respects. So he took me to this one parallel universe where they had a COVID pandemic just like we did. And then they realized that during the lockdown, how things in terms of pollution look so much better than when things were going full steam. And so they put their minds together and decided we've got to find a way to reduce the pollution. So to make a long story short, the scientists in Switzerland at CERN found a way to teleport that began with a water molecule, teleported from one place to another, gradually developed it so they could teleport goods, materials, even people. And so it was very much like the Star Trek teleportation system, beam me up, Scotty, where they had these teleportation stations stationed all over the place. And so freight was moved by teleportation, so they didn't need trucks or trains. People didn't need cars to move around because they could just go into one of these little stations, and they had like one every 2 or 3 blocks, and you could just dial in where you wanted to go and you showed up at the other side. So they basically had very little pollution because they didn't have much fossil fuel burning. And it was just an amazing sort of way for them to live. And it's something that sort of opens our eyes to think that one day maybe our planet could get to the same position. So that was really an encouraging sign to know that Earth in another parallel universe had done the right thing and had managed to get rid of their pollution.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah, and it also means, of course, that when a universe divides, and of course we don't realize it's dividing. When a universe divides, all of a sudden, where there was one Dr. Ann, now there's 2, each in a parallel universe. Okay, you may not realize that, but there may be any number of Dr. Anns in other parallel universes, and of course, because of the way things work, when everyone has free will to make decisions and take actions, their lives aren't going to be exactly the same. And so there's going to be some differences. And so what was really interesting to me is that there may be others of other Garnets in other universes who are doing different things. And it'd be really interesting that when you finally go back to the spirit side and you can look at these other parallel lives that have existed, then you can look and say, okay, well, when this person came to a major decision point, that person there took a different fork in the road than I did, and let's see how that turned out. And so it's a very, very interesting kind of learning experience to see, you know, when you look back at your life, Dr. Ann, you've probably hit major decision points, and you may look back and think, well, what if I've taken the left fork instead of the right fork? And you may be able to find that out if one of your cosmic twins had actually taken the different fork. So
it's interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah. And not that you could do anything about it. And the good thing is that when all of those parallel people, you know, die, and they all get rejoined back on the spirit side. So it's very, very interesting. And I'm really curious about whether I have others out there. There's no guarantee that you have.
I bet you have a lot of them out there, Garnet.
Yeah, hard to know, and I don't know whether you have any or not, but it's very interesting, and it's really a way for, and your soul actually occupies, when a person is split off, when the universe divides, your soul actually occupies all of those different clones.
Wow.
And then when those clones, their physical bodies die, they all get reunited back on the spirit side. So it's sort of like when you can see what your cosmic twins have done, it's sort of like being able to live several lives at the same time, although you don't know it right now. So it's very interesting, and I encourage people to have a read at that chapter, because it's a lot of food for thought, and hopefully some people can appreciate sort of the diversity of the universe, not just the ones that we have here, but all the parallel ones. And at some point, you know, and some people actually do have glimpses into parallel universes, because you probably heard of the thing called the Mandela Effect. Well, that's because some paranormal researcher was holding a conference or speaking at a conference in South Africa a number of years ago, and there a number of people very distinctly recalled news reports and newspaper stories about Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s. Whereas in fact, in our reality, we know that he was released from prison and went on to become the president. And so that is evidence of the fact that those people had a glimpse into a parallel universe where different things happened.
Wow. So there's more people than us out there, right?
Oh, yes, there is. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Yeah, so we have I'd say about 4 or 5 minutes. What would you like to talk about in that 4 or 5 minutes?
Well, and I'll just give, if you don't mind, I'll give some contact details for your.
Oh yes, please do. I actually got so interested in what you were saying, I forgot. So yes, please tell people how to contact you.
Okay, the best source is my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com. That's not easy to remember, but if you, excuse me, if you Google "Dancing on a Stamp" or any of my book titles, you can get there. On my website, there's information about all of my books. There's links to all my social media sites like YouTube and Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. There's excerpts that they can download of each book to get a feeling for what's in them. There's buy links there to all the popular online sites like Amazon and Barnes and Noble, where they can just click on it to buy my books. And all of the radio shows that I've been on, recordings are on my website, so they can go back right to my very first radio show in, I think it was June of 2013, and I've done like over 160 of them so far. They can listen to all the recordings, so they can you know.
Wow. Yes. Now, what? So can they go just to your website, www.garnetschulhauser.com?
Yeah.
And can you spell your last name, please? Because somebody asked me how to spell it.
It's SCHULHAUSER.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So check out that website, and anything, you have everything on there where people can go and find other things, and all about the books you have, don't you? And everything you just said.
Exactly. There's everything they'd want to know about the books, and you know, they can just go to my social media site so they can read the excerpts or whatever. They can. My email address is also there.
Good. Do you want to give your email address?
Sure. It's contact@garnetschulhauser.com.
Yeah, that's how I got you. Contact.
And if anyone wants to send me a comment or a question about anything that I said or anything in my books, I'd be happy to hear from them. And and you know, we can just go from there, because I really enjoy getting comments from people who listen to your radio shows and all the other radio shows.
Yes.
And I try my best to answer everyone. Sometimes I run out of time, but
I
I do
know.
my best.
Well, you do a wonderful job because you've got a lot to say in a few minutes. Actually, 60 minutes, or isn't really 60, about 55 minutes. That's quite a bit of time, one thinks. But then when you're talking like you are, everything is interesting. It flies by, doesn't it? Like this hour is just flowing by.
Yeah, it certainly does. And I certainly enjoy having the conversation with you, Dr. Ann, because you're very
Oh,
wise, and great questions, and I know that I know that when I'm talking about what's in my books, or what I found out, I know that you're not skeptical, that you understand what I'm saying, and
yeah, I have an open mind to it, and I find it very, very interesting. And I've got to spend some more time reading. But as for me, I've been so busy, it's hard to find time to read. But I'm going to be doing that. But we want to say a very happy new year to everyone. And check out my website too, AnnMarieEvers.com. And you can see some videos there to go to. For it might help you over the, what will help you if you listen to them over the period of time when we're having problems and you're feeling down. Just go and do that, and listen and tune into some of. I would tune into Garnet Schulhauser's. You have videos too that they can listen to.
yes, I have videos on my YouTube channel, and they can get to my YouTube channel by clicking on the YouTube icon on the webpage. And yeah, there's some videos there that I've done. I have videos, various kinds of videos, including some of my presentations where I've spoken at conferences, and so all of that's there on my YouTube channel. So I welcome everyone to dial in and make comments if they want, and I hopefully that people can become have a better place in life when they understand what Albert's been saying and enjoy their journey. And of course, you can always feel a lot better about where you are, no matter how many bad things happen to you, if you know that exactly why you're there, and that everything that happens to you, you're supposed to learn something. And if you have that attitude, and knowing that when you die, you go back to a wonderful place, no matter what you did, you know, you can't go wrong. You can't become lost. You're going to go back there. And so that should give people a lot of hope. And the worst thing that can happen to a person is to have no hope. It's to say, like, I don't know, I'm having a miserable life, and then when I die, I don't know what's going to happen. If they know that some very good things are going to happen when they die, that'll make their lives a lot easier.
It sure will. And I always like talking with you, Garnet. You've always got interesting information, and you're a wonderful guest to have. And I want to thank you and wish you and your family and all our listeners a happy new year. And let's make it as good as we can. And I think this 2021, of course, is going to be better than 2020. So let's just do the best we can and pick up his books and Garnet's books. He's got them all, you know, really beautiful written books and the beautiful covers, and pick them up and just read them over. And then when he comes on the show again, then you can have a lot of questions you might want to ask him. So we want to say thank you for listening to the Dr. Ann Marie Evers Show. Thank you, Garnet Schulhauser, for my special guest, for being here. And thank you, folks, for listening, and we'll see you next time. And
Thank you, Dr.
Well, if you have a problem and you don't know where to go, just dial up the internet and listen to the show. Tune in to Dr. Evers, she'll lift your spirits high. Her affirmations lead you from the darkness to the light. Say thank you, thank you, thank you. Believe with all your soul. When properly done, they always work, you know. Oh, just say an affirmation. Love, health, and abundance beginning to show. Oh, just say an affirmation. Show your gratitude and the blessings will flow. Oh, just say an affirmation. Love, health, and abundance beginning to show. Oh, just say it. affirmation. Show your gratitude and the blessings will flow. Yeah.
More time at home means more washing, drying, cooking, and cleaning at home, and more wear and tear on old appliances. But it's the perfect time to save on new ones at the Home Depot. For savings on the latest appliances, and right now, free delivery. From the kitchen to the laundry room, that upgrade is well within reach, and closer than ever. Save on top appliances, now at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. U.S. only while supplies last. Free delivery on major appliances $396 or more, valid through January 27th.
Canadian food. If you grow it, produce it, process it, pack it, or move it, you're not just a foundation of our nation, you're a key to our future. And we're behind you every step of the way. We're Farm Credit Canada, the only lender 100% invested in Canadian food. That means we're invested in you with financing and knowledge to help you achieve your dreams. If you're behind Canadian food, we're behind you. Learn more at fcc.ca. FCC. Dream. Grow. Thrive.